Spielen wie in einem Holodeck. Das kann man schon heute, wenn man das nötige Kleingeld hat. Wir haben Benjamin Teitler in Seattle besucht, der sich aus einer Oculus Rift und einem Kamerasystem für Motion Capturing seine eigene virtuelle Jedi-Höhle gebaut hat. Das System funktioniert kabellos und überträgt die Bewegungen des Spielers verzögerungsfrei. Im exklusiven Interview mit CT erklärt Benjamin Teitler, wie er sein eigenes Holodeck gebaut und das Spiel dazu selbst programmiert hat. Wer das System nachbauen möchte, findet alle Informationen dazu in der aktuellen CT-Ausgabe 24.
I bought a real motion capture system from OptiTrack. It was a large investment, but I did it, and I combined it with Oculus DK1 and some other off-the-shelf hardware for wireless transmission, and I was able to build like a full room-sized virtual reality system in my apartment. So the OptiTrack system, the optical system by OptiTrack, it emits infrared light that reflects off these balls. These are retroreflective material that reflects light right back where they come from. So thresholding is easy. So that's how all optical systems work. So what I've done here is attached it in a known configuration, so we can track your head, orientation and position in real time. And as you may or may not already know, the DK1 has really high-grade inertial measurement unit in there. So combining the two, you can get really fluid orientation tracking and pretty good position tracking from OptiTrack. So it's a really fluid, really smooth experience. So I added trackers to the Move controller so I could track a sword essentially, and then I'm using Sony's MoveMe server on the PS3 to stream data so that I can have it rumble when it needs to in game, and also for buttons for controlling things like turning the light sword on and off. I'm not actually using PS Move's camera for tracking. The light is just on because the server turns it on. I'm using my gaming PC to render the game, and I'm wirelessly transmitting everything, so that allows me to render really complex scenes with like shadows and dynamic lighting, pretty much anything you want to do at the constant frame rate that you really want for VR. But in order to do that, I need to wirelessly transmit all the data the machine needs from DK1. So that includes USB data that carries the head tracking data from the inertial sensors in the IMU for head tracking, and also video of the final rendered scene needs to come back in real time, low latency. So the one that I'm using right now is a Peerless AV wireless HDMI. It does 1080p wireless HDMI at 60 frames per second, uncompressed, and it runs on the 5 gigahertz band. It's a good product. It works pretty much as you'd expect it to, at least on the DK1, which has a normal landscape screen. It just pretty much works out of the box. For USB, I'm using, you can't really see it here because it's mostly in the bag, but it's a wireless USB hub from IO Gear. It's another thing you can just buy. It's pretty much just plug and play. It sends USB signals through your Wi-Fi router, and then it just looks like a normal USB device. So from your computer's perspective, everything looks like your DK1 is just plugged in, so you can write your games as normal, and pretty much everything just works. Wireless video has, maybe 2 milliseconds latency under good conditions. So it's really a non-issue. Typically you're doing like 30 milliseconds head tracking prediction anyway. So latency wireless adds on top of this is really negligible. I'm using a system from OptiTrack. I have 16 of their Flex 13 cameras. So the specs on those I think are something like 1280 by 1024. They do onboard thresholding, their IR. So what they send back to your machine is very low bandwidth. So basically I just plug you know, all the cameras in. They go through like some hubs, but they all are connected to one machine. And I actually run everything just on this one gaming machine. I run the tracking software, I run the game, you know, everything that I need to do. Well, this exact system is over $20,000.
Okay.
So each of these cameras is $1,000. So I have 16 of them, and then there's software that you have to buy from them, and then you know you need a mounting solution, and then there's some extra accessories to get the parts needed to do the wireless setup with DK1. So it's expensive, but there are trade-offs to be made, right? You don't necessarily need tracking as good. You get the low-resolution cameras. You could have a smaller space. If you don't need to track props, just head, you can get away with less cameras. There's a lot of trade-offs to be made here. I started about 4 months ago, bought the cameras, started learning Unity while I was waiting for them. I'd already had the DK1 for a few months. I'm hoping to see this everywhere, including at the home within the next, even year or two. So there are a lot of companies right now working on driving the cost of tracking, down to a consumer price point. Because tracking is the most important problem in VR, and historically it's always been super expensive to do well. Optical is still the best solution you can get, but even now it's still expensive. OptiTrack has done a good job bringing it down to a point where really serious hobbyists, with reasonable salaries can get it if they want, but it's still a sizable investment. My biggest hope right now is Sixth Sense, who's developing the STEM system using magnetic tracking technology. It's not clear, whether the range will be something you need to run around in a room, and play Star Wars, but hopefully you can get something close to that. Maybe combining multiple STEM bases. They've advertised that they're going to support up to 3 bases at once. And that system would cost less than $1,000. So if the tracking is good, hopefully, instead of a gaming enthusiast buying a gaming PC, which right now costs $2,000 or $3,000 to get a really good one, instead they would buy, a VR system, a gaming VR system. So hopefully within the next, few years, this is not out of reach for consumers to get